chapter 7, text 4, chapter 4 to text 4 to text 6. Text 4. Bhumir apo nalo vayu klam kammano buddhireva cha ahankaram itiyam te binna prakriti ashtadha. Translation Srila Prabhupada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. Text number 5. Apareyam itaspanyam prakritim viddhi me parham jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam dharyate jagat. Translation Srila Prabhupada. Besides this, O mighty Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. Finally, text number 6. Etad yoni bhutani sarvani upadhareya aham kritsnasya jagatah prabhava pralayasthatha. Translation Srila Prabhupada. All created beings have their source in these two natures of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world. Know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. Tasmai Shri Guru Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So here we see in this particular chapter, Lord Krishna is explaining to Arjuna his opulence. That means what are his energies. So normally if you want to know an important person, we first to know about what his qualities, what he has, and so forth, his opulences. So similarly, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So to know about Krishna, we need to know about the opulences that he has got. So here in this first sloka, in text number 4, he explains about how everything in this material world is composed of 3 energies. That is, Krishna has 3 energies. One is the internal energy, one is the external energy, and the other is the marginal energy. The whole material manifestation that we see here, everything that is there in this material world, they are composed of 2. One is the matter and the other one is spirit. The matter is composed of, here as per this sloka, we see that Krishna says earth, water, fire, air, ether, and earth, water, fire, air, and ether, plus mind, intelligence, and false ego. These 8 comprise the material nature or the material manifestations, which are also called Prakriti, and they are also called Aparashakti or inferior nature. The Lord is actually called Purusha or the Supreme Enjoyer. So for the purpose of this material creation, the Lord expands himself into 3 Vishnus, Mahavishnu, or who creates the total material energy known as the Mahat Tattva. The entire material energy with its constituents are called the Mahat Tattva. The second expansion that comes from that is the Garbhodakasai Vishnu. And as Garbhodakasai Vishnu, the Lord enters into each and every universe as a super soul. And the third is the Kshirodakasai Vishnu. And the Lord enters into each and every atom in the universe and every living entity as the all-pervading super soul, as the Paramatma. So these are the 3 basic expansions through which the Lord creates and maintains the whole material manifestation. And it is also mentioned that anyone who knows these 3 Vishnus can be liberated from this material entanglement. As you all know by now, that we are all entangled in this material world. And just by knowing that the Lord expands in the form of these 3 Vishnus and creates and maintains, that is good enough for one to understand, become free from this material entanglement. Now, the whole material world is a temporary manifestation of this energy of the Lord. It is a material energy. Now, all the activities that are conducted within this material world are directed by these three Vishnus, and these are called the Purusha incarnations. Generally, what happens is that people who do not know the science of God, they assume that this material world is meant for our enjoyment. And all that we see is for me to exploit and make the best out of it for my own sense gratification. Now, this comes due to the eighth element that is mentioned here called the false ego. Apart from these five elements, that is earth, water, fire, air, and ether, the three which are called the gross element, there are three subtle elements called the mind, intelligence, and false ego. Mind and intelligence, you all know. The false ego is that by which we consider everything that we see either as I or mine. I belong to this nation, I belong to this family, I belong to this society, and so forth. And the second manifestation is that mind, that means whatever I see belongs to me, it is for me, for my own sense gratification. Whereas if we see here in this particular sloka itself, it says that they are all material manifestations of the Lord himself, and everything originates from the Lord. And when everything comes from the Lord, they all belong to the Lord, and they are meant to be used in the service of the Lord. This is the gist of the entire Bhagavad-gītā. Some impersonalists, which Srila Prabhupada mentioned, the Prabhupada, they believe in the impersonal Brahmajyoti form of the Lord, but that is also not the complete manifestation of the Supreme Lord. Some believe in the Paramatma feature of the Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma in the four-handed form. That is also not the complete manifestation, but the complete absolute truth, or the absolute truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the third and complete manifestation of the Supreme Lord. Now, everything, this energy, that is material energy, manifests from the Lord. So the Lord is the energetic from whom these emanate. And also, the first five manifestations, which I mentioned, that is earth, water, fire, and air, ether, they are five gross creations within which are five sense objects. That is, they are consisting of smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. So material science comprises these 13, plus there are 10 senses, that is 5 knowledge acquiring senses and 5 working senses. So now this material mind, intelligence, and false ego, this is generally neglected by many philosophers. So those who deal with philosophy, they don't understand that these are also emanations from the Lord. They think that everything that is there in the existence which is called the Mahatattva also, is meant for their sense enjoyment. Now the false ego also includes its effects called the 10 senses, which are the nose, the tongue, the eye, the ear, skin, ear, hands, feet, voice, anus, and genitals. So all these come together as 23. And then, so all these separated elements plus the time, they all manifested, all total to the 24 elements of this material world, which is what is the matter of the Sankhya philosophy. They are original offshoots from Krishna's energies. So in effect, actually in the first chapter, we see the first sloka, we see that all these material manifestations are emanations from the Lord, and material nature itself is nothing but temporary. Whatever we see, whatever we observe, they are all temporary in this material nature. For example, our body, we see it starts from the stage of birth, gradually grows, matures, then starts dwindling, and then finally at one point of time, our body dies. Similarly, anything that you see, for example, you see a plant or a tree, they also grow for some time, but they all have a lifespan. So anything that we see in this material world are made up of these eight elements, and they all have an end. There is nothing that is permanent in this material world. Now, if we go to the next sloka, here we find that Krishna explains that there is, besides this mighty arm Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. So there are two natures I mentioned, that is matter and spirit. Matter is inferior and spirit is superior energy. So these, which is the superior energy, the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. Now in the superior interior energy, which is also Krishna's spiritual energy, which is also called Parashakti. Now, matter and spirit, they combine together to form this material creation. Now, how it, I'll explain to you how it works. Both forms of the material nature, namely gross as well as the subtle, are there. That is the 5 gross elements, the 3 subtle elements. Now, the living entities, we, the living entity, that is the soul within us, is called the Tatastha Shakti, or the marginal energy. The reason is that the tendency of the living entity is either to fall into the spiritual platform or into the material platform. So that is why it is called marginal or Tatastha Shakti. I'll give you an example. Now, just the elements, material elements which I explained so far, they as such are like dull matter. They cannot do anything on their own. For example, a product, you take a car. Now a car is made up of so many objects, so many parts are there in the car. But ultimately the car is a dead matter unless and until there is a driver who sits into it and drives the car. So similarly, any material manifestation in this material world, animate, inanimate, they are a combination of matter and spirit. And it is this combination that makes the material world grow, manifest, grow, and then at some point they dwindle. If you look at even the entire universe, now there are so many universes in this material manifestation. Ours is the smallest of the universes. Now, we can't hold a small object like a pin. If you drop it, immediately it falls down due to the law of gravitation. The law of gravitation, there are so many laws. So by the law of gravitation, any object that we leave it, they fall down. But we see there are so many objects that are floating in the air. For example, we see these planets, the innumerable number of planets in each of the universe. Like I said, ours is the smallest. But there are so many universes, and in each and every universe, there are so many planets, and all of them are floating in the air. The reason is that the Lord, as Garbhodaka Vishnu, enters into each and every planet and each and every part of the every universe and makes them to float. That is why when the Lord is present as a super soul, all these planets float in the air. Similarly, our body, which is made up of dull matter, of these 8 elements plus the knowledge acquiring senses, the working senses, all of them are dull matter. The moment the spirit soul in our body leaves the body is dead. The body has no value. Now, people normally try to put a very costly, expensive ornament like a gold. Recently, somebody was trying to put a gold necklace for a dog. People try to put gold ornaments to exhibit their body's beauty, and they think that by wearing a gold ornament, it adds value to their beauty. But all of them have no value the moment the spirit soul leaves the body. The matter is active only due to the spirit, and matter cannot act independently on its own, and it has to have the spirit. And we will see the importance of both the matter as well as the spirit in the next sloka. But then this cosmic manifestation has no power to act unless it is moved by the superior energy, the living entity. So, which is spirit. So energies are always controlled by the energetic, and therefore the living entities are controlled by the Lord. They have no independent existence. Also, there's a quote that the living entities, that is the Jiva Shakti or the Tatastha Shakti, the minute are the soul within us, It's a minute parcel, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Very, very minute. That also is described in the Bhagavad-gītā as 1/1000th part of a tip of a hair. So we can imagine what must be the size of the soul. We can't even perceive that. So that soul which is there within our body, which is the cause behind the movement of the material objects, that itself is a very small, minute part and parcel. Just like our hand, our legs, they are all small part and parcels of the whole body. Similarly, the soul which is there within our body is a part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. That soul has no independent, separate existence. Now, all the material manifestations are separated energy of the Lord. At the same time, the soul which is there within us, that is also energy of the Lord, which is spiritual in nature. And that is also a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. And being a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, the original constitutional position of the soul is to serve the Supreme Lord. And if the soul does not serve the Supreme Lord, then it is called what is called a deceased condition. And being a very minute part and parcel, they are never equally powerful, which normally materially intelligent person thinks. If you see a person who claims to have studied a lot and behaves himself to be a very great scholar, actually they don't have much of intelligence. They may have a lot of intelligence, but the real intelligence is knowing what is matter, what is spirit, and what is the purpose of this matter and spirit. Matter has been given to us. The whole material manifestation has been given to us because of our misunderstanding or misconception that we can enjoy separately from the Lord. At no point of time we can be independent of the Lord. At no point of time we can separately enjoy from the Lord. But if we think that we can separately enjoy from the Lord, that is our foolish intelligence. And it is because of our false ego, we identify ourselves as our body and everything as I and mine. My country, my family, my body. So we all focus on what is called the body, including the knowledge that we try to acquire today, right from the school time we join a school or a college. We think in terms of my body only. And unfortunately, the knowledge that is given these days in the form of education, that also is driven towards everything that is matter. But none of them focus on the real subject, that is spirit, because of its matter functions. Matter can never be independent. Matter cannot even move. If we try to move a dead body on its own, it cannot move because the soul has already left the body. So matter is a dead and a dull matter, and they can be functional only as long as the soul is there. And including the entire cosmic manifestation, they are all present only due to the presence of this Garbhodaka Vishnu. So all that we see, they have no power. And there is a quote given by Srila Prabhupada in the second sloka. It's a quote from Srimad Bhagavatam, which says that if the embodied living entities were eternal and all-pervading like the Lord himself, then they would not be under the Lord's control. That means whatever we see, they are all under the control of the Lord. Because if you see many people develop paralysis, if that is the case, why is it so? Because it is under the control of the Lord. Nothing is in our control. If the Lord wants to take away our vision, we cannot try to see. That is why some people lose that. And the more we exploit this material world, the more we suffer. The material world is a world of duality, that is pleasure and pain. We try to derive pleasure, but that pleasure, why we tend to derive that pleasure? Because the spirit soul that is there inside, by nature it is seeking pleasure. That is the nature of the soul. So the soul being present there, we think that with this material body we can derive pleasure, but the pleasure is always followed by pain. And that is why we see that there is no one who is always happy. In fact, the whole material world is called Dukhalayam Asasvatam. The absence of distress for a moment is what is called happiness. No one is eternally happy. On the other hand, everyone is always in distress. But whatever matter is there, by utilizing them properly in spiritual purposes, they all can be made spiritual. So, for example, there is a mic. We can use a mic to sing a lot of pop music or rock music. That mic itself is made of matter, dull matter. Now, that dull matter mic has no value unless and until there is electricity and unless and until there is a person who is going to speak to that or use the mic. So, mic is also made up of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Now, the same mic, when it is there, people who use it for material energy, for example, singing pop songs, rock music, etc. That is material. That can bound the person who is using it for a material purpose. But the same mic, which is made up of dull matter, can be used for spiritual purposes by singing the bhajans that glorify the Lord, as the Lord being spiritual, and by that it's a spiritual conversion of the same material object, and that gives liberation. So by nature, we all are not controllers. We tend to be controlled by either the Lord or the Lord's inferior energy, that is Maya. So by constitution, our nature is to be always controlled by the Supreme Lord. But due to our false ego, we tend to think that we are the controllers. The second sloka, the Lord says, all creating, the second sloka, that is sloka number 5, the Lord says, besides these, O mighty arm Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind, that is spiritual, which comprises the living entities, who are we, that is the soul within us, who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. So when we have this material body, and that we have got this material body because we have a desire to enjoy separately from the Lord. So when we have got this material body, because the presence of the soul within us, there is a tendency in us to exploit the resources of this material inferior nature. Material nature is inferior, but the spiritual nature is superior in nature. And it is because of the spirit, which is a superior nature, material nature has got this thing to function. Otherwise, material nature cannot function on its own. So Lord Krishna is the only controller, and all living entities are controlled by him only. So the Lord is spiritual in nature, and being part and parcel of the Lord, the soul within us also is spiritual in nature. But the soul is a small, minute part and parcel. And being a part and parcel, the constitutional position is to serve the Supreme Lord. That is to be controlled by the Lord, not control the whatever we see. Now, due to our false ego, we think that I can control whatever because of the ego. It's called false ego because it's not the true ego. The true ego is that by which one understands that he is a servant of the Supreme Lord. But the false ego is that I and mine. So because there's I and mind, we tend to exploit the inferior material nature. And in the process, we want to try to control by using our mind, our intelligence. And because of which we think that we will be always able to control and will be able to derive pleasure. But unfortunately, it is never eternal. Because all that we see in this material world, one day has a beginning and also one day it has an end. Now we'll come to the 6th sloka, where the Lord says, all created beings have their source in these two natures, of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, and know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. So in this sloka, we see that the Lord says that everything that we see in this material world, they have source in two. That is all that is material nature or that is spiritual in this world. And Krishna further concludes that he is the origin and the cause and the dissolution also. That means whatever we see has got a beginning, and then they are manifest in the material world for some time, and then over a period of time, there is a dissolution. What we see, in fact, if you see scientists today, they also say that everything is dwindling. We see that today there's a scarcity of anything. There's a scarcity of rain. There's a scarcity of water. So many things are there. Why? Because it is all explained in the Shastras, in the scriptures, which is of which Bhagavad-gītā is the basic. That Material world is a temporary, where there is a beginning and there is an end. And so at the end of the fixed period of time, there is what is called a dissolution. And at the time of dissolution, everything goes back to that Lord, and who is in the form of Mahavishnu. So everything originates from the Lord, and everything goes back to the Supreme Lord at the time of dissolution. And when we come to this material world, they are all either they are all within these two natures, either that is material or that is spiritual. And then we are not the cause. We tend to think that I am the cause of everything, I am the source of everything, but we are not. The supreme cause is none other than the Supreme Lord himself. That's why I explained that the entire cosmic manifestation also is developed because of the presence of the super soul. If the super soul leaves, then everything dwindles and goes back to the body of the Lord. So both spirit and matter combine to form this gigantic universal form, and they are original two separate energies of the Lord. So the Lord is the original cause of everything. There are many quotes. Lord Brahma himself prays in the Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. He says that Supreme Lord Ishvara Parama Krishna is the supreme controller. Ishvara Parama Krishna. Ishvara means controller. Supreme Lord Krishna is the supreme controller. And Satchitananda Vigraha, he has got a form that is comprised of Satchitan Ananda. That means eternity, bliss, and knowledge. The Lord does not have a beginning, the Lord does not have an end. And he is full of not only eternity, also full of bliss, and is full of knowledge. So that Lord, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchitananda, Anadiradir Govinda. That means he says that there is no other cause but Krishna, who is the cause of all causes. And who is he? Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchitananda Vigraha, Anadir Govinda, Sarvakarana Karanam. He is the cause of all the causes. So Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the cause of all causes. And he is the cause of both the origin as well as the dissolution. And when it origins from him and comes to this material manifestation, they come into either spiritual nature or material nature. But we, like I mentioned, the spirit soul, we can be either spiritual by undertaking spiritual activities. By undertaking spiritual activities, we become free from bondage in this material world. And by undertaking material activities, we become bound in this material world. So that is why we are called Tatastha Shakti, or marginal energy. That means we can either be marginal, or we can be either material, or we can be spiritual. And the cause of all, Srila Prabhupada concludes saying that we can build a big skyscraper, but then we cannot build even a small universe. The cause of the universe is none other than the Supreme Lord. He creates the universe. He manifests this universe for some time for us to fulfill our desire, because we have a tendency to desire to enjoy whatever we see. So the Lord gives us an opportunity by keeping us in this material world for some time to see that we are not the real enjoyers, but the Lord is the supreme enjoyer. And then at the time of dissolution, the entire universe also dissolves and then enters into the body of Krishna. So the Supreme Lord is the original cause of all causes, for which there is another quote Srila Prabhupada mentions, Nitya Nityanam, Chaitanas Chaitananam. This is a quote from Katha Upanishad. It says that everything has a beginning and everything has an end, and the Lord is the maintainer of all the living entities. So everything is created by the Lord, everything is maintained by the Lord, and then finally everything is annihilated at the end of the period of dissolution, and they enter into the body of the Lord. So this is the sum and substance of the entire 3 slokas that we have discussed today. I can take one question from any of you, if you have, before concluding the class.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandat Pranam, Mataji.
Prabhuji, what is the 24th element? I always find it difficult to understand that.
Time.
Oh, okay. Fine, Prabhuji.
Because the time
but
is
time
manifest
doesn't. But time comes under matter, Prabhuji.
Now, in this material world, time is there. In the spiritual world, time does not have any effect. But in the material world, time has an effect. So that is why it is material world. But in spiritual world, time is there, but time does not have any effect.
Very nice, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Where is this
And
given
it is because
actually?
of time, it is because of the time, passing of time, that everything actually, we see that every moment has passed. Because of that, the body also decays. In every second, the body decays. So it is because the presence of time, which is material in this material world, that everything starts dwindling also.
Thank you very much,
That time is,
Prabhuji.
yes, Mati. Is it
Thank
clear,
you,
Mati?
Prabhuji.
Thank
Very
you.
clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Bhagavad-gītā Siddhis ki Jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, thank you.